In the ever-evolving world of weddings and event work, one trend has been hot and seems to be here to stay for a while: flower meadows. Welcome to Stems and Success by Oasis. My name is Kelsey Thompson, AIFD, and I'm so excited to be sharing profit-focused design and business tips with you every month. Today we're dialing into wedding and event work with a closer look at flower meadows: how to make them, how to sell them, price them, set them up. You get the idea. I'll share a few different Oasis products that will make all of that easier and make you more money. Now, this look has migrated from ceremony backdrops and aisles to the reception. You've seen this around head tables and cakes, at the back of the bride and groom, and now it's popping up on guest tables. In this episode of Stems of Success, I'll show you how to create these looks, as well as share some tips for pricing and easy setup. Now, flower meadows create the illusion that flowers are growing directly from the surface that they're on. As I said, you've probably seen this a lot in the look of like runners, maybe in front of a head table or stage, or down the center of a long table or a mantle. It can also transfer to arches or even bouquets. It's just all about that hand-picked look. Whereas traditionally a floral runner was more compact or had low groupings, the meadow look is an explosion of stems and varied textures with lots of depth. By the way, shout out to Botanica Design in Tampa, Florida for sharing those beautiful images. Ian, Zoe, and their team do amazing event work, so I'd highly recommend giving them a follow on social media. Now, as you've seen from those photos, that full lush look is absolutely stunning and one interpretation of this trend. But for our brides that maybe are on a budget or may want something a bit more airy and organic, I'd suggest a different approach. Staying with those same vertical or radial insertions and lots of texture, make concentrated groupings that create several focal points along a table or around a space. So here I've got a few designs done in 6-inch and 9-inch Lomi design dishes. Now imagine a long king's table with several sizes of these growing designs spaced along it. Or for a round table, you could use a 12-inch Eco Essentials designer's dish in the center with moss and greens spilling over to create that really tablescaped look. Using an airy design like this as a focal area on a table can create that just picked look without the budget of a solid floral meadow. Now, this method also gives the client the option to include other objects. Fruit or veggies, books, and lots of moss with tons of candles have all been trending. This can give the tables a feel of being more curated while easing the stem count and the cost a bit. Now, no matter how you style a flower meadow, the concept is the same. Stems are intentional with mostly vertical or radial placement and lots of depth and height difference. You want your piece to look like it's growing naturally out of the surface. The secret to successful tablescape meadows lies in their foundation. Now, the mechanics that you use will depend on a few things: the style and fullness of your design, where it's going, the product that you'll be using, and how long it has to last. I'm going to share a few of my preferred mechanics, and I know that all of us florists are essentially floral MacGyvers, and there are honestly endless possibilities. But these are some of the products that I've personally found make the meadow designs easier at my shop. You may prefer different mechanics, and that's okay. You do you. We are a small team at my shop, and most of our weddings are out of town, so we need to be able to create them ahead of time at a really large scale, keep them hydrated, transfer them easily, and then set them up on site quickly and get the heck out of there. So for round tables, I like to use the Oasis Designer Lomi dishes or the Eco Essential dishes. I'm going to share a tip for extending that beautiful tablescape look onto the table here shortly. For long tables, the single, double, or triple brick trays work perfectly. These are great for mantles as well. Just make sure that your weight is balanced. You don't want them to be too front heavy. I'll be creating a design in a double brick tray in just a bit. For meadows that need more stability or need to be moved a lot, I like the Oasis event saddles. This is what I use for an outdoor aisle or in front of a head table or a stage, where I can be sure that the sturdy base won't get kicked or tipped. When the Macarena comes on, we don't need flowers flying, right? If you've got a bride that wants really large-headed, heavy blooms like hydrangea or garden roses, you might want to consider something a little bit sturdier like the saddle, because you'll have more room for insertions. If you're designing a cake meadow, try an Oasis mache wreath cut in half or quarters. Simply dip the cut ends into your hot glue to seal them, then soak the foam like normal and design. You can also use the Oasis foam garlands in the same way. These hold water really well and they allow for flexibility. Now, this cake shown here was designed by Loanne Burke, AIFD, and she used that garland method, cutting the netting off, sealing the base, and then placing the small sections all around the cake because she had limited table space to work with. And by the way, super appreciate you, Loanne, for sharing your tips and photos with us. A quick note: a circle of clear cellophane under the form or garland will help prevent moisture from transferring to the linens if that's a concern. Let's say they've got great grandma's tablecloth or something. We want to keep that safe. Okay, let's get to the fun part, designing what I'm going to call a meadowscape. Today I'm going to use the Oasis double brick tray, and I'm going to do a design that I would say is medium fullness. I've got the midnight foam in my tray, taped with waterproof tape. I went ahead and smoothed the corners. It kind of looks like dirt, right? Then I'll go in and do a light cover with some fresh moss. Kind of give that moss a pull as you place it. You want to kind of break up the strands a bit so it covers more. You can get your insertions in. If you need to pin it, I like the new bamboo pins. Speaking of moss, I'm seeing so many moss heavy looks lately, and I love that spin on this trend. It really makes for a very romantic-y forest vibe. One thing to think about when you're using fresh moss is that it can transfer water and mess to table linens. Here's a tip. Section out your moss pieces that you want for your tablescape, then cut a piece of clear cellophane to fit. And I'm using some with polka dots so you can see it. Then you'll use some spray adhesive to attach your cellophane to the moss back and trim any excess. Now you've got a moss pad that you can lay on the table or butt it up to your design and not worry about moisture transfer. If you've got specific moss pads that you want to coordinate to a specific design, label your moss pad. So for example, moss A goes with design A, and then you can spritz your moss with water and store it all back in a box until you're ready for setup. Bonus here, that cellophane back moss can really be reused a few times, then just peeled off and used in your shop for plants or basing down the road. Okay, I'm all mossed in, so let's add flowers. Now personally, I like to do a little bit of greening, then get my flowers in place, and then finish off with greens, but design in a way that works for you. If you're creating several duplicate pieces, it can be helpful to line them all up, assign your designers a few stems, and then just assembly line the entire process. So for example, one person maybe mosses and greens, the next person does all the vertical insertions, the next designer does the lower focal flowers, and the last person finishes with accents and filler. This way you know they will all flow visually the same. It can really save you a lot of time, which is important when you're designing at a large scale. Now with this piece, I'm going to be really intentional with each stem placement because we want this to feel like it's growing from the moss. We don't want to overstuff this. It's okay to leave some negative space so that each bloom has its time and place to shine. Nature doesn't happen perfectly, so asymmetrical placement and lots of different heights is key. Let's get started. If you're new to this kind of vegetative design style, it can be helpful to think about the growth cycle of a plant. The older, fuller growth is towards the bottom, while the newer, petite growth is at the top. Use your most cost-effective and heavy flowers like mums or hydrangeas down low, your more premium or medium-sized stems like roses in the middle layer, and then stems that have good movement like butterfly ranunculus, lisianthus, or these delphinium at the top. So if you're a fan of the show The Office, you're probably familiar with money beets. I always joke with my staff all the time that we want the money beets, or the flowers that are at the best, at the closest visual layer. So using this low, mid, high value method also helps with the budget. Now we're talking stem placement. Think about where your design is going to go. A table centerpiece like this needs to be considering sight lines. We don't want guests having to peek over a floral fence like Wilson craning his neck. Yes, I'm an 80s baby, so I watched a lot of Tool Time with my dad growing up. But anyway, keep in mind that when it comes to height and fullness for our guests, we want to save the floral fences for ground pieces or mantles. Another mechanics note is to be sure that your design is physically balanced. If it's front facing and has a back, you need to make sure that your insertions still use the entire brick of foam so it's not too heavy on one side and gets tippy. If you're creating a runner look like this, keep in mind that your tray will be butting up against another tray, so account for that with your recipes and your insertions. And if you're creating a cake meadow, be sure to get the dimensions of the cake and the drop from the base of the cake stand if they're using one. You want to make sure that your flowers aren't running into that cake stand when you go to set up on site. The meadow style done the way that I'm showing you today does require a design medium. And while I used the midnight foam here, I did want to mention that if you're using dishes, brick trays, saddles, any type of container, you can absolutely do the Oasis fiber floral as well. Now this design medium is made of volcanic rock with a bio-based binder, and it's more eco-friendly. I think it really lends itself well to this design style because you really don't even need to cover it. It looks cool on its own. You can always edit down the brick for a softer look. I just pull bits of it off. It's kind of like thick lint, and it almost creates this kind of dirt look. Now, one tip I wanted to share from my friend Jenny Ingram is that this design medium designs well dry. So create a design guide hole with a hyacinth stake and then insert your stem all the way to the bottom of the brick. And when your design is mostly complete, hydrate your brick slowly from the bottom up so it sucks up that water. Now, I was messing around with this the other day. I did a design with some, honestly, old ranunculus in this fiber floral. Those suckers lasted over 2 weeks on my kitchen table. I've got a photo of it. If you haven't tried this medium, I highly recommend playing around with it, give it a shot. The Meadows style looks beautiful done in upcycled containers too. So think bottles on a moss runner, a centerpiece in grandma's pie tin or punch bowl. I always rent my containers, even these trays, and get them back to reuse over and over. But if your bride is eco-conscious, you could encourage those personal touches and vessels to reduce your plastic use. And if being more sustainable is a goal for your shop, any change is a good change. In this case, you could try incorporating the fiber floral or require the return of your plastic bases, or you could use true biodegradable cellophane to line a vessel of their very own. Now let's talk about pricing for these types of designs. No matter what style you're going for, super packed garden roses, or a sweet little airy design with chamomile, I always recommend creating a sample. Now when I'm giving brides quotes for this look, it's generally by the foot. So that's how I mock them up. You can also do them by sections. For example, if you know that you're going to need 6 of these double brick trays at the back of an aisle, you can do 1 tray up and then multiply by 6. Remember, unless your bride wants to see the sample, and if they do, then please, please, please charge for it. You don't even need to use exact flowers or even real flowers to make a pretend design up just to price. This is purely for your backroom use, just to get your pricing and costs right. So I like to use silk hydrangea in all my event work, and I mix it with fresh hydrangea, fresh flowers, and I often rent out the heads and then I can reuse them. I probably made $200 on this one hydrangea head alone over the last few years. They're an amazing basing flower, and guests honestly can't tell if they're real or fake. But back to making a pricing sample. As long as the flower is the same head size, you can use cheaper blooms. So for example, disc bud mums have the same visual coverage as a garden rose, and of course are a fraction of the cost. A small alstroemeria or charmelia can be subbed for spray roses, and then I'll throw in myrtle as a stand-in larkspur or delphinium. The goal is just to practice the stem placement and get a count and then make a recipe. Then you can tear that thing apart and make a cute little cooler design with it. Personally, I like to add 5 to 10% to whatever my estimated cost is. This gives me a bit of a buffer if things come in smaller headed or I feel like it just needs more filler or greens as I'm designing the final product. Also keep in mind that your design will have 2 end caps, so you want a little more product for those sections. Now, if you're looking to do a low design that's mostly greens and candles, you can use a half brick of foam. So just cut it here, cut it in half this way, and this saves you a little bit of money. This brick will support stems that aren't too tall or heavy, but make sure you use varieties that can tolerate a little drought. I like ruscus a lot because it doesn't need water, and I can use it laid across the brick horizontally. So I lay the piece down, then cut segments off of a second piece to kind of wedge that first piece of ruscus in or pin it down. This creates a more textured runner than a true meadow design, but for a budget-conscious bride, you can mix some moss, some ruscus, do some candles, a few pops, and maybe some carnations into some segments, and then have a really low-key meadow look. No matter what you're doing, make sure to charge appropriately. Time getting the base ready, design media, the tape, the moss, the time it takes to sort out all the product into those buckets, extra care you might need to transport it, etc. It all adds up. Last but certainly not least, how do we sell this trend? First off, don't sell from your own pocketbook or your own mindset. If that's what they want, that's the quote you give them. If they don't like it, be ready with some alternatives in your back pocket. Now, saying that, I've had many brides send me inspo pics with this look just for them to be sticker shocked when I give them a rough estimate. So I'm going to share some tips from our friend Zoe Galina at Botanica Designs on selling this look. Number 1 is to manage expectations on the fullness or the thickness of the designs. You can use visual aids or inspiration images to make sure that you're on the same page as the bride. If their budget doesn't allow for a 12-inch thick rose heavy meadow, can you achieve a similar look with a 7-inch wide carnation meadow or maybe a pared down rose design that has more negative space? Number 2, be upfront that these can be an investment. Use that word, investment, but one that can be used in many ways. A design from a ceremony can then be repurposed into the reception so that their investment goes further. Ideas would be placing the meadow runner along the front of the stage, sectioning it off to place at the ends of feasting tables, or even around the base of the cake table. Tip number 3 is to focus on the focal areas. Your bride may not be able to afford a long king's table with a metal runner, but a floor piece in front of their sweetheart table and some accents around their cake are 2 very highly photographed areas where their money could be most impactful. Remember how I said that we're pretty much floral MacGyvers? Don't be afraid to think outside of the traditional metal box or runner. This trend can inspire anything from a suspended insulation to bar decor to the sweetest little pocket boutonniere. This look celebrates the natural world in all its imperfect beauty. So as couples continue seeking authentic, immersive experiences for their weddings, This approach to floral design continues to grow in popularity. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this trend, how you use it, if you like it, if you think it's here to stay. Drop me a comment and let me know. And be sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next episode of Stems of Success. See you then!